Just going to have a look at the city centre today, sort of nudging into that sort of first route when I looked around the city centre, adjoining Queen Victoria Square. So that's probably the very well-known three ships that was on the face of the BHS store. We'll come round to that at the bottom of Jameson Street. So this is the planned route. It's a very short one. I think you can walk around it probably about 20 minutes. So I'm going to set off at Paragon Station again. That's the start of the route that I took on Monday, but looked at the north part of the city centre. Coming down Jameson Street, King Edward Street, around Victoria Square. I'll just pick up on some of those buildings again. Then coming down Carr Lane, which is the south side of the City Hall, and then coming down Paragon Street to the war memorials, which stand here opposite the Royal Hotel and the Paragon Station. So the first part of the route is I'm going to come from this station and then all the way down here. King Edward Street is actually sort of cuts across. This is where the BHS building is from that photograph of the three ships at the front, just on there. But it's well worth just coming up to a bit further up here. It then comes onto Prospect Street, which we came down on Monday, and then went along Albion Street, which is probably just off there. This block here is part of the Prospect Centre. I think you give us access in from round here as well into that. It's not the best of the shopping centres. I think probably Hull has got too many shopping centres, and they said that most of it has been sucked out into the St Stephen's shopping centre, which is just over here, because leaving that sort of fairly empty. And we'll see there's quite a lot of fairly empty shops along here, especially Paragon Street, got a bit of a backwater today. So let's have a look down. This is an older photograph of when House of Fraser was here, but it wasn't built for House of Fraser. It was built in 1950 for the department store Hammonds, because it was they opened, construction started in 1950 and opened in 1952. But the family-owned firm was first established near the North Bridge in 1821. Because it's family owned until 1889 and then was bought by the Powells. And in turn, in 1972, House of Fraser bought the business for £8 million. I hope they got their return on their investment because it closed in 2019 when it was taken over by Mike Ashley's Sports Direct and remains empty today. You'll just see that there's some metal railings around in front of that store. So this is Jameson Street that comes down here. And because I forgot to take this photograph, so this is off Google Maps or Street View, and this is on the right-hand side. I hadn't really noticed it until I'd coming up here to start taking the photographs when a lot of parking attendants came out of this door here. So that's where they are, and it does say it belongs to the whole city council on that door, because that's a metal door, and it does say above there Festival House, which is all part of this complex here. Like I say, this was built in 1950. Like I say, it's built in sort of partly on the ground floor, a Georgian style with its hooded entrance is into that there. The problem with most of this area that we're going to have a look at, Jameson Street, it was that it was bombed during the Second World War in the bombing raids of 1940 and 41. We'll learn a bit more about that as we go round. So coming down here, most of all this on the left-hand side all the way down is fairly new builds. So I guess the 1960s right through to the 1980s really coming down this side. But there's a number of buildings down this side which are worth looking at, which have sort of escaped the bombing raids of that period. This one here is called the Masters Bar now, but was built as the Waverley Hotel in 1903, and it's sort of that sort of a fairly typical, I'd say, whole style built of brick and terracotta. A lot of buildings built around this side because most of the city centre relaid out there by the mayor of the time, Alfred Gelder, who was also an architect. He was responsible for Paragon Street. So all these streets to the right, such as this one going down here, lead to Paragon Street. That's where we'll be coming up at the end. So I think at the end of this one, it's got the Kingston Tavern, a pub down there, which is empty at the moment. We'll see that on the way up. And so they could say slightly Dutch style if you look at the tops of all these as well, which is fairly typical of Hull as well, and East Yorkshire and the Goole area. And because the next one down, which I can say it's a better photograph actually when I was looking at the Google Street View is than the one I had taken, is of another hotel, the White House Hotel, built just slightly later than the Waverley Hotel. This one is dated 1909, and of course, not quite as fancy. So it seems that this sort of a row around here has escaped the bombing raids, because I'm going to look at this next one here, and that's King Albert Chambers. I'm going to say they were planned before the outbreak of World War I, but this wasn't completed until 1923. And again, I'm going to say a Dutch style with its step gables, but I can't say that because it would be a Belgian style, because King Albert was the Belgian king at the start of World War I. I think he went into exile. So that's why it would be called King Albert Chambers after that. So that's where the name comes from. Carrying further down there, which you'll see on the film, because it's a long straight street here, this is a building called Queen's House. It takes up a huge sort of quadrangular part of the city centre. And again, this was bombed during the Second World War. And again, we see this being completed, well, built between 1951 and 1952. Because we almost walked the whole way around it on this, because coming up down here is Paragon Street there at the end. And because it's bounded all the way around by shops on the lower floor, and I guess offices higher above that. Note the arch here, because this is where the delivery lorries, or two arches, this is where the delivery lorries can go in to access the rear of these premises. And there's also a rather large car park right in the centre. So it's got an empty centre to that. And off to the left, which is pictured on this photograph, is the entrance to the Dull Prospect Centre that was built in 1976. So this is the one part of this that was bombed along here. There was a Prudential Assurance building by Alfred Waterhouse, built in his red terracotta style, because they were all flattened in World War II. So coming down here as well, we come then to the end of Jameson Street, where it meets the King Edward Street coming across here. This was built as a co-op store in 1963, and is fronted by this sort of iconic mosaic by Alan Boyson of Wolverhampton, and it represents 3 ships meant to be trawlers as well. If you look at this next photograph, it's a bit more of a close-up of it, it actually spells out in their mass Hull. So you can see the H there, the U coming there. I think there's an L coming down here, and then there's another L there. So it spells out Hull in its distinctive own style up there as well. It stands 66 feet high and is 64 feet wide, or if you're talking in modern terms, 20 meters by 19.5 meters, and is made up of around 1 million pieces of Italian glass. The Latin across there translates as the success of industry. It was built originally as a co-op store, became a BHS store in 1970. And this closed in 2016. For those of you from Hull, there was also a ballroom and nightclub here, sometimes called the Skyline Ballroom, later Bailey's, and then Romeo and Juliet's. I think it ended up as a rave type of club as well. But the council has wanted to demolish this whole store, citing that it was covered in asbestos, but they were thwarted in that, because in November 2019, the mosaic was given grade 2 listing status. The council branded the decision to list it as ridiculous, although in 2007 they called it superb example of modern public art. So they got to retain that curved facade, and is really, I guess, a centerpiece of a £130 million regeneration scheme that will take place around here. So that's the three ships. So I'm going to look to the left now up King Edward Street. There's no name for this corner building here, because you can see how fine the buildings were here, because they're all sort of built around about 1900, only because the city centre was sort of relaid out after sort of Queen Victoria Square was laid out in 1897. And so this is, here was this fine corner building. This is dated 1905, and it's got an ornate copper dome on the top. It's quite run down, this not the buildings particularly, but the sort of city centre. We've got a sort of a cash shop there. I think there's a cash converters there, and some of these other ones along here are amusement arcades. In fact, one of them is even closed as well on that, because this one leads down, this is a street that leads down to Prospect Street, or changed its name partway along there, but we came up as far as Albion Street to look at the library there. So the next building along from here, that's the corner building there, is looking at this one here, which is cash converters today. That's called Ariel Chambers, and that was built in 1920. The one next door to this, you can see part of Rebel Vapes there, is, although it's named Jubilee Central, it was actually built as a Methodist hall in 1902. The hall is actually up there on the first floor and is arranged in theatre style. In 2017, I came to the City of Culture, as it was known, and actually went to see a film up there in Jubilee Central. And because it is rather like a cinema up there with a stage in front of it. So I guess preachers went on there as well. So I think it's still used as concerts today, judging by an old poster along there. So looking further up that street, where it comes onto Prospect Street, we end here really, King Edward Street, with this another fine building here. That's Leisureland, is built 1919, and the one with Swags on it over there, that is built in 1923. So that's sort of continuation of building pre and post World War I. So let's set off at sort of Paragon Station this time and come all the way down to King Edward Street. I'm just going to stop at the mural. I don't actually walk up here with the camera. So this is where I'm starting off again by the three ships mural on the side there, coming down again King Edward Street, coming into Victoria Square, and just coming around Victoria Square to the side of the City Hall, which is this block here, and the Punch Hotel. I'm going to stop at there. So I've shown you some of these bits around here before. The Ferens Gallery is there. This is the Maritime Museum in this triangular area. And this is the Yorkshire Penny Bank, which is now a Cafe Nero. So this is the Queen's building here, taking all that sort of central square up. You can see where it's sort of the car park to the, I guess the staff is in the middle of there. Because this is a pedestrian street, and coming along here, this is all pedestrian area until we reach Carr Lane again. This is where sort of traffic can come round. So King Edward Street, because that's cutting right across in front of it again, and because there's not really much to say about this, because you'll see it on film coming down here. There's just sort of banks. I think I say quite a lot of these smaller supermarkets around here. Because a couple of minutes walk down there from the mural bring us back into Queen Victoria Square. Like I say, laid out in 1897 when Hull got its city status. So I'm just going to wander around here in a clockwise direction, setting off with the Yorkshire Penny Bank over there. That's the former old dock offices, now the Maritime Museum. So you can see what a wonderful building the Penny Bank is, because it's on the corner of Savile Street and opened in 1901 and was designed by Benjamin Septimus Jacobs on this very fine small corner site, largely because further down here it was bounded by the Queen's Dock, which now was filled in 1930, and then the Queen's Dock linked to the other docks in front of it, Prince's Dock, and then the Humber Dock now being the marina. So those sort of three docks pass through the city centre, and that was a difficulty about this site here for the I'm just going to say, just pick up one photograph down here. If you're coming down here into Cafe Nero, and you can sit outside there at the moment, and you can look up and see where it does say Yorkshire Penny Bank. It said it's had its headquarters in Leeds, which I showed you a few weeks ago on Infirmary Street, because they're probably still there today. So continuing around the Maritime Museum, just to remind you about that, because an unusual triangular building, because with three domed towers on its corners, because of the shape of the land between the docks around here. They're built as the office for the Hull Dock Company, and this is opened in 1871. And it replaced the one on Dock Office Road, which I showed you on Monday, or the top of High Street, because they were opened in 1820, but then found itself a bit away from the city centre and opened these in 1871. Designed by George Christopher Wray, and it was the only building he built in Britain, because most of his work is in India and in Cairo, in Egypt as well. In 1975, it became the Maritime Museum. Like I say, when it does reopen, entrance is free, as it is to all museums in Hull. Because it's a very fine pediment there, representing sort of the Humber commerce and prosperity, with the sort of the with sea gods on the other side. The plaque there in the middle is to the Hull Dock Company, the one there to the city, and to the left, and to Trinity House on the right hand side. You can't go in at the moment because it's undergoing a £12 million refurbishment, and so won't reopen until 2024. Closed in January 2020 when 50,000 objects had to be taken out of the museum. So they're not going to do anything on the outside. It's just refitting the whole of the inside of there. Sitting in the centre of Hull, the city square, or Queen Victoria Square, is Queen Victoria herself, sculpted by London-born Charles Henry Fair, because he did quite a lot of these sort of memorials around this time. I think he did the original War Memorial in Leeds as well. He was born 1867, died in 1940, and the Prince of Wales opened this in 1903. I said before is that the toilets underneath here have been closed. I was wrong about that because they reopened in June 2020, and it says they're open from 8 a.m. to 6 o'clock every day of the week, from Monday to Sunday. But I have to dispute that. I was going to take a photograph inside of a gents' toilet when it was going to be empty, when a man came along and locked it up. And this was at 5 o'clock. But it says of the gents that it retains original earthenware stalls, cisterns, and cubicles. So all I could show was this old photograph here of the ladies' toilet. So I'll have to wait to go into there, because as I've shown you, there's quite a lot of public toilets in Hull, but they're all closed. The one under King Billy's statue on Market Street, because they're meant to have some fine ones over there. And I've shown you on Monday as well on the closed toilets in Barker Street as well. And no doubt there are others in the city, but because these have now been reopened. So coming further round the square is I've got to probably just need to mention City Hall as well. Designed by the city's architect, Joseph Hurst. Work began in 1903 and completed in 1909. You say this was badly damaged as well in the Blitz of 1941, and restored and opened in 1950. It's unusual is that the concert hall is on the first floor, allowing shops, as we say, as we go round it, is all the way on the ground floor as well. I think I showed you a bit more on the inside of that the other day. And coming round, and this is monument buildings, because so called, because it takes its name from the column with the statue of Wilberforce that once stood here on what was called Monument Bridge, just beyond it here. And these, were built in 1907, 1908. So really the whole of Hull was a huge building site, really, at the turn of that century as well. Just notice the entrance here to the Prince's Quay shopping centre, because one of the main entrances is a little further on, just beyond what the corner we see here of the Ferens Art Gallery, because this was funded by the public benefactor and Liberal MP for Hull, Thomas Ferens, because he gave £50,000 for its construction in 1926, because it stood on a part of where a church stood on here. I think before that there was a charge to go in here, and I think at one time there was, but when I went in on the 1st of June, is that there was no charge at all. So whether it's been lifted during the COVID ones, I've no idea. But if you're going to go in at the moment, you've got to pre-book a time slot, although sometimes, as you see by these rooms, it was largely empty at the time. I think it was about 1:30, 2 o'clock or something like that, because this was formerly on the site of a church that closed in 1917 and when was demolished as well. And it's really got, as you can see here, a collection of old masters. And as you move through the rooms, which are generally on the ground floor in a U shape, because he comes across various other ones here as well. And there's a cafe off here as well. You can actually sit outside there overlooking the Prince's Quay as well. Got some very large carpet in there. I did stop for having lunch here, which is very unusual for me, but coming through there. But yes, you can sit outside and there's some absolutely massive carp in there. So nobody's gone along with a net and caught these ones. I mean, I don't know if you call them a shoal, but that's in there. Coming through there, just to showing a couple of other things here, is that there's a painting of Prince's Dock by Atkinson Grimshaw, a Leeds-born artist, and this was painted in 1887. Because it says there he was born 1836, died in 1893, and also had a house in Scarborough, Castle by the Sea, which I've shown you before, that he's lived in for quite a while. And then probably just coming out of here is that there's modern paintings as well, including Hockney, of course. It must have a selection in every art gallery in Britain. So let's leave the Ferens, give you an idea of what it's like. And next door, we've got the Punch Hotel, because they built 1896, terracotta fronted here, very fine all the way around. Again, this Dutch gable type style, very common with those buildings in Hull. And because this is the terracotta here coming from Bermontofts in Leeds, because it's part of really a tradition of very fine fronted pubs in Hull. The next building along, which I'm showing from a better angle here, is the Prince's Quay Shopping Centre, because they opened in March 1991, and partly built across the Prince's Dock here, but it's so called because it was opened by the Prince of Wales. I think it dates from 1809, I think the date of this dock is here as well. I think it wasn't originally called that, but I think when the Prince of Wales came along, when the Queen Victoria visited, it was renamed in his honour after that. Because it was very sort of confrontational at the time as whether it should be allowed to be built across here, because it was spoilt really the view that people complained about of looking down the dock into the city centre. But I guess it's sort of when the fountain is working and the sun is out, then it looks quite pretty. But in the inside, it has around about 80 shops in there. The main one in there at the moment is Next, and it's also got a cinema inside there as well. So coming back onto the, just coming off the square there, coming down the side of Carr Lane, as it's technically called, we see the full size of the City Hall here, and all shops going all the way around. I think Robbie Jackson's was quite a well-known store. I don't quite sure what sort of shop it was, and like I say, that is now closed as well, but I think it was traditionally been there for a long time, so you can see the full length of that. So let's have a look at this section. So looking onto the last leg of coming around here, coming down Carr Lane, it shows me going along here, but in fact, I don't to come a little further along here and come down Paragon Arcade, which comes down there. And then actually going to double back up here because there's a whole Blitz memorial just on the corner here of Paragon Street. I must say it's in a bit of an unusual location because sort of not many people come down Paragon Street anymore. So then I'm coming further down here and ending up at the war memorials here at the end. So we've sort of done that big circle around the city centre. So this is the Carr Lane. So just continued walking past the City Hall here, and because the first left right-hand turn is Chariot Street, and that actually takes you to Paragon Street, because that's where I'm going to double back up to the end of Chariot Street to see that whole Blitz memorial. But I'm coming down to this building here, which is a very fine arcade. Like I say, it's really nothing really down here at all at the moment, or probably ever will be, because they've got this jewelers, the arcade, and then there's really nothing else. This road comes down to really where that bus is. It joins Ferens Way, which crosses it across there, and then continues forward as the Anlaby Road, so leading out of Hull that way. But this is the Paragon Arcade, because this was the two Victorian period arcades built in Hull. The one we've seen before was the Hepworth Arcade, which is a slightly earlier one. This was built, the Hepworth Arcade, in 1895, which is further over to the west of the city centre. But this one was built in 1892 and designed by Alfred Gelder, who I'd mentioned before. He was the mayor from 1899 to 1903, and because they're also responsible for a lot of the laying out of the city centre, especially the Guildhall area, where the street in front of it or down the side is called Alfred Gelder Street. And he also laid out Paragon Street, which is behind here as well. So I guess the street at the other side as well, Jameson Street, being part of that as well. And but the Hepworth Arcade, so the Paragon Arcade, as it says in letters above there, was built in 1892. So if you walk down this, it brings us out to Paragon Street at the other end. It's got a number of small independent shops along here. As you can see there, it's a vinyl record shop in there. I think the next record store day is sometime in July. We've had two this year. There's also a cafe down there, a haberdashery shop, a florist right at the end, and there's children's clothes shop and other shops along here. It's quite nice in there after all the sort of the other ones that around the city centre, to find some smaller ones. So that's looking back down it. Like I say, it's got a glazed roof. You can see a bit more of it on the film as I wander down there. But the end of it, it takes you out. What we really can see is the sort of the main frontage of Queen's House, and like I say, it coming down here with its, I guess, its very main entrance down there, with its the clock tower above it. So that's why I'm going to turn right down here, coming to that sort of silver globe you can just see on this photograph. So that's at the end of Chariot Street, where it turns into Paragon Street along the bottom side of the City Hall. Again, this leads up into Queen Victoria Square up there, and because it's all pedestrianised, because so there's nothing really down here. As you can see, there's building society, there's the hairdressers and things like that. So there's nothing particular to see down here apart from this. This is a stainless steel globe, which was is a memorial to those who died in the bombing raids on Hull. I think it's sometimes called the Hull Blitz Memorial. The funding of it came from the Hull People's Memorial Charity, who have a shop on Whitefrigate. It's not just to the bombing raids of World War II, but Hull was also attacked in World War I, when on the 6th and 7th of June 1915, the deadliest attack on Hull took place. The first bomb to fall demolished 14 houses and killed 4 people. Another bomb, you see, these are from airships that came across from northern Germany. And the other bombs destroyed shops. One narrowly missed Holy Trinity Church as well. And another bomb on a street near the city centre claimed 5 lives as well. In total, 26 people died that night, and 40 further were injured. And like I say, around the city centre, 13 other high explosives and 39 incendiary bombs were dropped, destroying a further 40 houses and shops. They came back the following year, say on the 5th and 6th of March, 1916, a clear, cold night, because it must have been very cold up in those airships, when Hull was clearly visible. And that's when they tended to come over, and its streets were covered in snow. 7 bombs were dropped on the city at around 12:05 in the morning. Hull then had no anti-aircraft guns, and the first bomb dropped landed in the grounds of Hymers College. And as it moved over the city centre, a further 5 people were killed in their homes, including 3 sisters. And only 1 bomb hit the docks. That was Albert Dock, but only hit a crane. They came back the following year, so later that year, on the 9th of September. The airships followed the railway lines into Hull along Anlaby Road, dropping 8 bombs and killing another 5 people, including 3 members of the Hall family. Rose Hall, the mother aged 31, Elizabeth, and Mary aged 9 and 7. And other bombs were dropped as well, but nobody else was killed. The airship left going across East Yorkshire over Hornsey at 1:47 in the morning. It was then decided that to put searchlights and anti-aircraft guns into Hull, and really, although they did return, is that nobody else was killed really during the rest of World War I until World War II. So if you look up closely on this, you'll see that it's covered in plaques. It was unveiled in May 2018, and from a picture I've seen, it lights up at night. I think it's in a very odd location because it's not, it was meant to go into Queen Victoria Square, but perhaps people didn't think that it was appropriate to go in there, this sort of very sort of shiny thing. Probably even better in front of the BHS building or something like that. And like I say, it's covered in plaques. If you see some of these, these ones here are to the Ayrton family. They're 3 children aged between age of 12 and 17. They were killed on the 31st of March, 1941. And again, I think you can see one to the Jones family somewhere here, just underneath it. They were a whole of that family killed, and they were aged between 12 and 54, again happening on that same night, the 31st of March, 1941. I can say there will be World War I ones on there as well, but I've just photographed it from this side. So that's really what you see. I can say it's well worth having a close-up look at that. And then continuing down Paragon Street, there's really nothing to see at all down here. This is a mock Tudor building, the Kingston Tavern. And it was formerly a Yates's pub, and that closed in 2017. Although it was sold that year, is that nothing happened to it. And in May of this year, 2021, it was again put up for auction with a guide price of £200,000. So 3 lads are wanting to turn that into get a bit of a pub club type thing. The next one further along here that we can see, which now it says Heron Foods on it, was built in 1929 and was once a Sainsbury's. So how times have changed. Heron Foods is actually a whole business founded in 1979. They have 293 supermarkets across the north. They usually target deprived areas as well, and employ around 5,000 staff. And again, just looking down Paragon Street down there, I don't know if that was a cinema at one time, because it tends to have a bit of a cinema awning on it, but I found nothing else about that. So that's looking back, that globe, the Blitz one, you can just see it just down there. But there's really nothing up here of any interest unless you go into Casino to have a bet on one of their one-armed bandits. But if we turn around, and at the moment there's quite a lot of metal scaffolding and other stuff around that, that's why I avoid it on the bit of film, and that brings you to the War Memorial. So Paragon Street is just here, Jameson Street just there, so it stands between the two. Festival House is that one just behind it here. I say war memorials because there are two memorials here. The most distinctive one is this one to the front, and that is to the Boer War, 1899 to 1902, when the British wanted to push the Dutch settlers, the Boers, out of South Africa. And this was erected in 1904 and was made by the Leeds Marble Works, and it lists 57 men from Hull who signed up and died in that war. Sometimes, as we've seen in the one that stands in the roundabout in Hull, in York, near the Castle Museum, which is very hard to get to, most of those men actually died of dysentery and other illnesses caught down there, and not in the fighting. So I'm not sure how that is with the Boer War Memorial here. The one behind it is the World War I Memorial. Sorry, just ending on that one. Is the World War I Memorial that was erected in 1924. There are names of over 2,000 soldiers on the wooden plaques in the foyer of the railway station just across the road behind me. But recent research has found that over 7,000 died from Hull and a further 2,000 from surrounding villages in World War I. In World War I, over 75 men served from Hull, including 1,200 sailors. I'm going to say later on, it was also used as a World War II memorial. I can find no details on how many people died from Hull in World War II. So I'll just come on to that last one there and just show you the bit of film coming down Paragon Street. and because they have not shown any bit of the port of Hull, and this is probably the something you can't see anymore, because this is I was on the Pride of York leaving Alexandra Dock and to go to Zeebrugge when I filmed this, because I'd been down here going across the Zeebrugge a number of years ago and was amazed how they got this very large ship down through the lock down here, and there's only a couple of inches either side to that. And the first time I went down there, the captain hit the side of it and it bounced all the way down the lock, because I think once it's got a bounce on, it can't stop it. But come December 2020, that route was axed, and the Pride of York, I've no idea what happened to that, but they plied that route for the last time in 33 years. So that route from Hull to Zeebrugge no longer takes place. But the one where they've got the roll-on, roll-off ferry over there from Hull to Rotterdam still goes on, which is a shame really, because Zeebrugge ended up into northern Belgium around there, and could go Ghent and other places like that. And so I got permission and I went along, took my friend Jeff Druitt along with me to see how they actually get this large boat down here. So this is something you can't see anymore, and indeed if you're on the boat you can't see, because we're up in the captain's nest, as I'd probably see it, to get the ship down here.
Forget the low-cost airlines, forget the Channel Tunnel. Every year, nearly 1 million people from the Yorkshire area choose to make their journeys to the continent through the Port of Hull. Now, they travel on one of the 4 ships which every night crisscross the North Sea between Hull and Rotterdam in the Netherlands and Zeebrugge in Belgium. The ships are operated by P&O Ferries, and they describe the experience as a mini-cruise. So tonight, we're going aboard the Pride of York to Zeebrugge to see what you get for your money. Well, I've been invited onto the bridge of the Pride of York by the Captain Kevin Alcock, and one of the most tricky parts of his job comes right at the beginning of the trip, the voyage, when we leave Hull. Captain Alcock, why is that? What's so tricky about getting off the berth?
Well, we're inside King George Dock, and in order to take the ship out into the river, we have to negotiate the lock, and there's approximately 4 to 6 inches either side.
What do you actually have to do to make sure you slide her into the lock without banging viciously from side to side? And I'm sure you never do that.
I have to judge that by the engine speed, and normally we would only manoeuvre on 2 engines, but if I feel I need extra engine capacity, extra power, then I can have 3 or 4 engines on to help me manoeuvre.
Forecastle Bridge, let go spring forward. Let go spring.
I do remember one of your predecessors telling me he had a little sort of black chalk line down one of the windows here on the bridge, and he lined that line up with the head of the lock. Is that still what happens?
It is. We have a little line on the window down there, and just by taking that line of sight onto the concrete wall of the lock, it initially guides us in.
So there's still an awful lot of old sailors' technique about this.
There can be, yes. The weather forecast for tonight's crossing is for light southeasterly winds, force 3 to 4, and therefore I do anticipate that it will be a comfortable crossing. We should arrive on schedule in Zeebrugge tomorrow morning, but further announcements will be made in the morning to update you of our exact arrival time and to give you full details for disembarkation.